and welcome back to our series of interviews with Euro's amazing members around the world. It's my great pleasure to introduce you to Laurent Quistrebert from Resident Vietnam, Director of Business Development. We were lucky enough to spend some time together at our Ho Chi Minh conference, so it's great to see you. I can't
Great to see you too.
That just 5 months ago we were able to just get on a plane and travel without even thinking about it. How times have changed. Laurent, I was going to ask you first, Vietnam was very much ahead of the curve. Can you talk me through what things are like now and the basic stages of what's been happening?
Yes, sure. Yes. So first of all, thank you very much for this interview. It's unbelievable. I mean, as you just said, we met a few months ago in Ho Chi Minh City. Who could imagine that we would be now talking about, the, the situation? So yeah, in Vietnam is indeed a bit ahead of, I mean, what's going on in Europe or in the US. It may sound weird to most of you, I believe, but well, life is back to normal here. And I actually kind of missed the social distancing period as well, to be honest, because we were not in a very strict lockdown as most of you. We were still able to go out. There was no traffic. There was no pollution. We could call our favorite restaurants and order food and wine with great discounts and get it delivered at our door faster than ever. So that was actually a pretty nice period, I have to say. The weather in Hanoi was just beautiful. We played a lot outside with the kids as we were still allowed to go out for walks. So I actually played with the kids more than I would normally do before the virus. So and yeah, for about 6 weeks or so now, there's been no COVID-19 community transmission. So I think we are extremely lucky. There's never been a significant community transmission in Vietnam anyway, thanks to strategy and method that have been used. There's been, I think, in total only 320 diagnosed cases in Vietnam, and no deaths, which is quite amazing for a country of 95 million people and about 900 miles of border with China. So I mean, I'm saying that there's been no new COVID-19 cases recently. There's been actually new diagnosed cases in the past couple of weeks. But those were imported cases, we call them, such as Vietnamese citizens who returned to Vietnam or foreign business managers and experts who with special authorization to enter the country. And those travelers had been obviously isolated from their arrival, so never in contact with the community. So yeah. All this to say that, traffic on the road is chaotic again. Things is exactly back to normal, yes. I think apart from nightclub and karaoke now, all businesses reopen, restaurants, bars, shops, shopping malls, cinemas, hairdressers, taxi, bus services have resumed. As I explained also earlier, airlines have reopened most of domestic routes. Mm-hmm. So we are able to travel within the country and actually at a very reasonable cost. So that is another great thing we can enjoy. The schools have also reopened for I think 3-4 weeks now. They were closed since the Lunar New Year, so in January. So it's been a long closure, but yeah, everybody's happy that schools have reopened nationwide for all grades, and yeah, besides, I mean, the parks and playgrounds also reopen as normal. So
it's such a different conversation I'm having with you that I'm having. I mean,
absolutely.
It was an incredible response from the Vietnamese government. They were very quick to act.
That's right.
So the situation now, obviously. Domestic tourism, that's amazing. You can travel around, schools, I mean, like you say, it's life as normal. What's happening in terms of the country opening up? Do you have any opening up to the outside? Do you have any milestones?
Yes, well, so currently commercial international flights have yet resumed operations. So only Vietnamese national, as I explained, as well as foreign experts and specialists are eventually allowed to return to Vietnam on specially chartered flights.
Okay.
And it's carried by the authorities in accordance with very strict roadmap and a 14 days strict quarantine at the designated quarantine center or hotel.
You can't self-quarantine, you are.
Absolutely, yeah, that's right. So and everything is coordinated by the local authorities. So the companies sponsoring these travelers have to seek approval to the labor department in their province. The labor department will kind of collect all the requests and send to the people committee in that province, and the people committee will then approve or not the entry. And coordinate accordingly with different authorities, the health department, to coordinate the transportation from the airport to the hotel. And specific hotels are actually kind of, dedicated to the quarantine. So no other travelers would stay in that hotel. So yeah, for the anecdote, last week we got approval for, I think about 10 assignees to enter Vietnam, and they will actually be staying in a 5-star hotel for their quarantine for 14 days.
Wow.
On the West Lake, so in Hanoi. So it's quite interesting.
Be worse.
So,
and when it's something that just occurs to me. So when you're sent, and that's amazing. There's a couple of things I wanted to pick up on. I guess because Vietnam has a very strong state in terms of like its government. You mentioned the local authorities
right.
involved. It's actually, I would say, probably easier to coordinate in a big state country rather than in a small state country like the UK and Europe. That's very interesting.
Absolutely. Yes, indeed. I mean, since the beginning of the crisis, it's been, everything has been really localized. So the ward and the district, and then the province. There's a lot of government. There's a lot of people working for the government, as you probably know, in Vietnam. And in such a situation, obviously, it really helps. So yes, it's been quite effective. But again, in terms of reopening, it's very hard to predict when Vietnam is going to reopen its border and resume also issuing visa as normal. Vietnam is, I think, acutely alert to its hospital capacity and medical equipment available. So they wouldn't take any risk in allowing a new wave of cases, obviously. So having said that, the Vietnam civil aviation authorities have recently sought government's approval to partially resume some international flights starting in June. So we expect in the next couple of weeks some news. We can assume also that it will begin with countries considered low risk.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you've heard maybe of travel bubbles.
I have.
Between countries in Asia Pacific. Yes. So this is quite interesting. It wouldn't be surprising that the first people to arrive here without quarantine requirements would be travelers coming from China, Hong Kong, or South Korea, which is, by the way, the largest foreign investor in Vietnam. The South Koreans are also by far the largest foreign community in Vietnam. So it would really make sense. We would suddenly start seeing travelers coming from this country before any others. I can't speak for the government, but I'm pretty sure also that Vietnam is considering the travel bubbles also with New Zealand and Australia if the opportunity occurs. So yeah, we look forward to this. Obviously, there's a lot of discussion going on. I've just heard today from my colleague in Ho Chi Minh City who was reading an article. Apparently, the government may consider opening Phu Quoc Island in the south for international travel. So that could be the first international flights, for travel, for travelers, for tourism purpose. from I don't know which destination yet, but yeah, we'll start with an island. Obviously, it's easier to contain the pandemic in case there's a diagnosed case. So yeah, on the other hand, the government seems to be making an effort also to further implement and clarify rules and requirements of entry for foreign investors, business managers, and experts. So there is now a very clear roadmap, as I explained to you earlier, on how you can seek approval, and it's unsure whether or not all will be approved, or only companies which have sort of a power here could. I mean, that's what happened with our clients, large multinational companies recently. They got approval for 10 and even more in Ho Chi Minh City. But again, I mean, a random company with one or two expats, whether they're going to get the approval, I'm not sure. A lot of international schools also are concerned because many of the international teachers are leaving in a month's time when the school year ends in July. And the new school year will start by mid of August, and they need to be ready. So the authorities is certainly working on that as well. I mean, but they may let business travelers first before international teachers. I don't know. It's hard to predict, and it's difficult for us as businesses as well, because we have all these questions from clients, and we have no response.
Yeah, that was what I was going to ask, actually, because when you're talking about the travel bubbles, are quite a lot of your clients coming from those particular areas, Australia, New Zealand, South Korea? And does that mean you can make any predictions about your future work?
Not really, to be honest. I mean, again, I assume that our clients who send assignees from the region, whether it's Thailand, Hong Kong, China, South Korea, very likely we will start seeing these assignees before any others. Thank God for us, because Hanoi, I mean, as I explained, South Korea is one of the largest, the main investor here. We actually have a number of clients who send Korean assignees to work with their like subcontractors of the big ones like Samsung, or and basically they are sending South Korean nationals to work for these clients in Vietnam. So we may have a chance to see these assignees in a very near future. We actually do have already, as I explained, a couple of assignees who are staying in a 5-star hotel at the moment in Hanoi. So they will start their assignment in 2 weeks. So we already did the visa application for them. We are processing the work permit. And yeah, we could start actually relocation services as well, home search and all that. There is no restriction. We are allowed to conduct home search as normal. There is no social distancing anymore to respect. So I mean, things are really like normal. The only thing is that there is no one to serve at the moment, which is quite frustrating, I have to say.
Absolutely, I can imagine. It's just so interesting to have this conversation, and everybody else that I'm talking to is working on their policies, their guidance, their safety policies, their hygiene safety policies with their clients, with their teams, whether or not they're in one car doing virtual home searches. It's really great to hear that when things do start again for you, the process will be less difficult. But
absolutely.
In the meantime, you're just kind of. So just tell me, how are your teams doing? Are they doing okay?
Oh yes, definitely. I think they are very happy to be back to work. We actually decided to stay. I mean, to work remotely from home for about 2 weeks. That was back in March. So during the social distancing order, even though we could actually go to the office, we were not the kind of business that had to shut down. So offices could normally work. So yeah, our team is doing great. It was actually surprising to me that during the social distancing order, when we decided to work remotely, as I explained, most of our staff actually wanted to come back to work after just a couple of days. And I was like, well, I mean, there's not much work. You're at home, you can enjoy it. it's actually, I realized afterward, and one of my staff explained me that, working at home on your laptop when you're also living under the same roof with your family-in-law who expect you to take care of the meals, the laundry for 3 generations, the household tasks, and the kids who are also doing e-learning, all this was just not compatible. So
that's I mean, again, that is a very interesting cultural impact.
yes,
I think probably for most people in Europe, I mean, most people that I've spoken to, the working from home thing has actually gone in very easily, and a lot of
absolutely.
yes. A lot of our members are saying we probably won't go back to a physical office environment. And I know Bryony, because you're saying that about Bryony, our operations manager. I remember her saying to me at the beginning of it, she was like, "I thought running a conference was hard work." She said, "To try homeschooling your children, that's much more difficult." So yeah, it is a huge balance, and
it is.
Certainly for a country like Vietnam, where, as you say, you have multi-generational households, and there's then an expectation that you're doing your work on a laptop. So it's pretty tough.
Yeah, when you are a man, it's okay, it's fine. Yeah. But when you're a woman, you have to take care of all the household tasks. And
very interesting.
It's not easy indeed. So yeah, everybody's happy to be back, definitely.
I can imagine. It is fascinating. I will watch closely as to how things open up. I mean, I think it sounds to me like obviously there's that huge balance in Vietnam between wanting to continue with the huge growth that Vietnam's undergone over the last 2 decades against the safety of the population, which right now is very safe. So that's a big political, governmental decision to take. But it sounds from what you were saying that with the right processes in place, travel bubbles, quarantine measures, things will start to move.
Well, it's hard to say, to be honest. Again, as I said, since the very beginning, the Vietnamese government is taking no risk at all. So considering letting any foreigner enter Vietnam and being potentially affected by the virus is something that they are not even thinking about. It's just. It's in a way we were. I mean, everybody was like talking about it when we were just like 10 cases, and every day it's like, oh, 1 more case, 2 more cases. Where in Europe it's like thousands and thousands every day. Yeah. So it's and obviously they don't have the capacity, some of hospital beds, and so. Yeah. I'm afraid to, beside the travel bubbles, which could eventually allow some foreigners to come here without the quarantine requirement at some point, I believe in the next couple of months. I think normal international routes to Europe and the US will only, perhaps with a quarantine requirement until the end of the year, easily, I think, at least, or until a vaccine is found, maybe, and in that case, they may actually request, before issuing the visa, they may request to see a proof that the person has been vaccinated. So that's, obviously businesses are complaining. There's a lot of, all the hospitality industry is suffering like they've never. I was in Hoi An last weekend, and I was talking to the general manager who said during the week in the resort, where I think they have probably about 150 rooms or so, they have 5 rooms booked, during the week, and they have 50 staff. So how do you want to survive? It's even if salaries are pretty low in Vietnam, at some point, there's a problem. And so the government has been encouraging also the Vietnamese to travel within the country. The fact that nobody can really get out of Vietnam. I mean, like myself, as a foreigner here, if I go back home for the summer, I'm not sure I can come back.
Yeah.
So all expatriates here have actually no holidays planned abroad this year. So they will be traveling in Vietnam, and it's very interesting to see also all the 5-star hotels who normally target the international tourists who starts really to focus more on the local market and offer packages including lunch and dinners, Vietnamese lunch and Vietnamese dinners. And so yeah, it's a very interesting time to see how things goes. But yeah, it's hard to predict again when they really go step by step.
It's just so fascinating and it's so different. I was talking to our vice president yesterday, who's based in Madrid, and Spain is planning on opening up for tourism by June 30th, I think. And yeah, you know, so and I suppose we're talking just no restrictions, and so you know, it's I don't know how that's going to look. I don't know how that's going to work. But when economies like Italy, Spain, and Greece, 25–30% is based on tourism, there's this rush. Whereas I was talking to Anna Cavell in Sydney, and she said the same as you. Australia is closed, but local tourism, go for it. Go up to the Gold Coast, go to Melbourne. You know, that can happen. And I think they're about to open a travel bubble with New Zealand, and then possibly with yourselves in Vietnam. So different. It's been fascinating to talk to you.
It is very different. It is very different. I mean, in Europe and the US as well, I think there's really a lot of pressure. I mean, the freedom of expression in this country, obviously, make the government take certain decisions that in Vietnam will never happen. So it's the Vietnamese have really coped with the situation since the beginning, and they have complied with the method used by the government to control the pandemic. I mean, it was really unbelievable. I was reading an article recently about the French Constitutional Court, which in the name of the right of respect individual freedom rejected, some of the measures that the French government wanted to implement to prevent the spread of infection. And I mean, I can definitely understand that, but in certain contexts, of a pandemic, for instance, maybe the population could also temporarily accept, exceptional measures which prove to be efficient, and that could prevent the need of a strict confinement of the entire population. That's really what happened in Vietnam. I mean, whenever there was a case, everybody was aware of it, and we got the name on our smartphone. I mean, where the person has been, that was totally crazy. At the beginning, I was like, that's insane. But that's how they managed to isolate, all these people who were potentially affected by the virus, and there's been never any spread. And when I was talking to friends, in Europe, they were like, "Wow, I'm sure the government is, not telling the truth. They are hiding, the numbers." Absolutely not. Everybody knew. We received on our smartphone whenever there was cases diagnosed. So,
I mean, it's going to be so interesting, looking at this from afar in the future. What happened?
Yes, absolutely.
Because, there's a big debate now in Europe. I mean, Spain is still on a state of alert, which means that the government can still implement extraordinary legal powers. France, I know, we never went there in the UK. I don't think France ever went into a state of emergency. Germany didn't have to. Sweden never even put quarantine in place because they knew that the people would do what they were told. Culturally, all of these differences. And, like I said before, when you look at, a country with a big state like Vietnam, in a crisis like this, it is extraordinary how to give up some what we would consider fundamental human freedoms actually make such a huge difference. Like here now, they're talking about the Google and the Google and Apple app tracking app, tracing app. There's one being offered here by the NHS, and now, of course, the debate is, like you said, you'll get a thing saying you've been within 15 meters of somebody who's contracted, and it's a human rights thing. But if we want to get out of this, I don't see much alternative.
That's true. Yes, absolutely. I mean, as you said, in Vietnam, collective interests have always prevailed over individual interests. So it's totally understandable here, when thousands of people were tracked down by the authorities for having somehow been in contact potentially with a COVID-19 case. And whenever there was one person diagnosed, he was interviewed, and he had to tell exactly where he went,
Yeah.
who did he meet, and the local authorities went, to every places and basically isolate every person that had been in contact. And that's not only like one level, under the diagnosed case, but it goes to 4 different levels.
Yeah.
So it was they categorized like F0, F1, F2, F3, and F4. And at some point we have most of us have actually been, F4. Yes, and I was afraid at a friend, my guitar teacher, called me and said, well, actually, I have my friend who went for a drink the other day. His girlfriend has a close friend who's actually a stewardess in the Vietnam Airlines flight where there was diagnosed cases. So now I'm F3 and then you are F4. And I was like, oh, should I expect authorities to knock my door and maybe eventually, take me away? So there was a really scary time.
Yeah. Wow. It's just so different in that.
It is. It is very different.
My nephew was in Switzerland at the very beginning of this, at the beginning of March, at a meeting, and then came home on the Friday. On Monday, one of his Swiss colleagues, called to say, look, I've been tested. And at that point, we didn't have testing in the UK. They'd done it for a week and then stopped. And of course, then the track and trace begins. And, he'd been with my sister and the family over the weekend, and then they got sick. And then that's how, what happened in Vietnam has contained it. What's happened in Europe has not. So
yes, absolutely. Yeah. It's a totally different situation.
It's totally different. It's fascinating. I'd love to come back and talk to you again in August and figure out where things are by then.
Yes, absolutely. I'd be happy to share.
That would be great, because this has been really, really fascinating. Laurent, it's been really a pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. And like I say,
thank you, Dom.
Let's catch up during the summer, and I hope you get, to enjoy, a few nice internal holidays in Vietnam.
Yes, we're gonna do a road trip actually from Hanoi to Ho Chi Minh City. Yes. Great. So I've been dreaming about it for a long time. So that's really an opportunity.
Right?
It is. It's 1,600 kilometers long or something. So it's quite a long trip, but we look forward to it. Yeah, and we do many stops, obviously.
Yeah.
So
I look forward to hearing about it when I talk to you next. That would be absolutely brilliant. We'll set up a date for sometime in August.
Great. Excellent.
All the best to your teams. All the best to your family, and stay well.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dom. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.